So our music director, Toby Thomas Rose, is going to be spending some time in Europe for the next number of weeks. So we'll miss Toby, and we are so fortunate for this Sunday to have Heather Grove at the piano. Yeah. Thank you, a great joy. Marlene Bottenfield offers our land acknowledgement this morning.
With this basket of black oak acorns, let us remember we walk and breathe on the Nisenan land. I stand in front of a grinding rock with a pestle nearby, and I feel the history of the people and land. Once a woman sat on the rock, grinding her family's meal. It's too sacred to sit on now. The whispers of its story wrap around me. Next to the boulder is an old rusted pipe that once carried water down to the Greenhorn Creek for mining. It has a story, too, of destruction, rape, and greed. This month, we look at freedom, our freedom to choose to do things differently. May we wisely forgive the intruders to this land and the feeling of guilt within ourselves, so that we may always see through love's eyes. We have the freedom to visualize a healing community where the Nisenan may practice their unique cultural heritage and religion without interference, where we, as community, can show gratitude and appreciation for living on this land that has been nurtured and cared for thousands and thousands of years by the Nisenan. May we always remember that we are visitors here.
Marlene, thank you. In a set of recent sessions, 20-some members and friends of UUCM drafted elevator speeches, their own brief answers should someone happen to ask them about Unitarian Universalism or about UUCM. The idea is that these are the answers that a person has time to offer and that the hearer has enough space to take in just a few rides from one floor to another on an elevator. Well, here's some of people's current drafts, because these are elevator speeches in progress always, right? And they'll be spread throughout the service, but we begin with Gwen Imons. So Gwen, what is Unitarian Universalism?
Oops. Let's see. Good morning. Our universal Unitarian faith believes that wisdom comes from many sources and that God is defined by our own beliefs and in our own way. We are encouraged to draw from our own life experiences to find our own truth and knowing that it will evolve. We commit to live by shared values that put universal love in the center. These values guide us, and we make every effort to bring our best self forward. We gather in community to encourage one another in our spiritual growth. We learn how to live together in loving diversity and to work together for the good of all living beings and our precious world.
Now, if someone were to ask Jill Banwell, what is Unitarian Universalism? Jill might answer in a mere 6 words, which Jill illuminated beautifully in a business card. Unitarians are an accepting, liberal community. You can say that before the doors have even closed. The lighting of the chalice today is offered by one of your board members, Charlene Dugan.
These words are adapted from the writing of Chaim Stern. What do we want? And if we want it, do we need it? And if we need it, can we get it? And if we get it, can we keep it? Do the answers depend on who we are? Help us to be what we are becoming. Is that becoming more than we are right now? Help us to trust the dawning hour. Help us to know ourselves better. And as this circle of beloved community opens and expands, help us to become ourselves. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of service.
And we send that same light with our youngest members as they are heading on their way to Kids Connection. We'll sing them on their way. Happy Pride Month, everyone. Yeah. You may know that the local Pride family picnic is this afternoon at Condon Park, so feel free to join in and celebrate Pride this month. For those who don't know, I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa. I have the privilege of serving this community, this congregation. And though having our cell phones go off in the middle of things can be really fun and entertaining, and sometimes even fabulous, I'm going to invite us to silence them for the moment so that in the silent moments, we'll be able to hold that silence together. And I'll invite you in a moment to greet each other. If you're new, I invite you to greet other people in the way that feels comfortable to you. If you've been around a bit, I invite you to greet people in the way that feels brave enough to greet other people. Sensitive, of course, to what people need. I invite you to make sure everyone's greeted warmly and well. Here's your chance to say hello to the folks around you.
Welcome to this special day, to this day of celebration, as we mark the date, June 4th, 1995, 30 years ago, when local residents attending the Unitarian Church in Auburn wanted to gather closer to home. Courageously, they birthed this church and named it the Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains. During the last 30 years, many people have joined together and given to nurture our unique UUCM home. The founders and those of us today aspire to live with the values and principles of the Unitarian Universalism tradition that calls us to follow our spiritual path freely, without limitations of any one specific creed or dictation from the government. We celebrate our UUCM community and shared values, the care for all beings, a pursuit of a meaningful life, and a desire for a more just and equitable world. We honor our respective differences in thought, spiritualities, and ways of being, and acknowledge the enrichment of life born from this diversity. I'm Carol Nimick, the worship associate this morning, and I welcome all to this moment in our community. We have the gift of freedom and a powerful opportunity to make thoughtful choices. Freedom calls me to grow, to know myself more fully, to be as present as possible in each moment, and to seek a connection with all. This freedom asks me to reflect on deeper truths. One truth is the value of community and being connected. Another truth is that serving others returns greater self-awareness. I hold a deep appreciation for the founders of Unitarianism and of Universalism, as well as for the group of founders who gathered here 30 years ago. It takes vision, energy, and committed hearts to start a new community of like-minded seekers. They birthed a safe haven of huge scale and support, for which I'm grateful. I welcome all to this sanctuary of freedom. Those of us in this room, those in the chanting room, and those attending via Zoom. Thank you.
Jim, what's this Unitarian Universalism thing that you've been taking part in lately?
Before I answer that, this week I met somebody new at lunch, and we were exchanging pleasantries. And he asked me what church I went to, and I said Unitarian Universalist. And then I froze because I hadn't memorized my elevator speech. And I didn't know what to say. Fortunately, he didn't ask, but here's what I would have said. Unitarian Universalism is a non-judgmental, liberal, religious home that will accept and support you wherever you may be in life's journey. It is composed of diverse communities operating without a common belief about God, the universe, and death. Instead of creed, we share a spirit and vision of radical inclusivity, individual agency, and social justice. We embrace personal discovery and growth through learning, engagement, and service. Our only doctrine is love. Together we strive to create a world more compassionate, sustainable, and just.
I love that you had a chance to practice. Carol is going to read Viv Tipton's elevator speech. So I'll ask, Viv, hey, what's this UU thing?
It's so fun to channel somebody else. From Viv. What I find at UUCM, it is a shared faith and practice that experiences life as love. It is a shared truth that all of us have inherent value as is, and all are welcome. It is a faith that knows the truth of service as enlightenment. It is a faith that is complicated and messy enough to make room for all our beliefs and wisdoms. It is a faith that asks us to explore through curiosity, to expand our self-understanding through classes and shared resources, and to live our lives, our love, through the lens of shared values: justice, interdependence, generosity, pluralism, transformation, and equity. UUCM is a set of folks that accept me as I am and consistently enrich and broaden my life, therefore helping me to become a better me. Viv Tipton.
Unitarian Universalist, walking through the door just gives my heart a lift. People ask, what kind of church is this? Unitarian Universalist. Who knows what? I can't walk or talk the list of Unitarian Universalist. I hold the never-ending question, all the hardest beat assists. I'm a Unitarian Universalist. Even though what you say might not be what I know, we sit all together. Every Sunday we go, searching through our lives for the mystery of loving, sifting through the times like an old-fashioned coven. I know this is my church, eternal talking about. These are all my people, our voices singing and shout. Unitarian Universalist, standing all together, we offer the world a gift, the all-important question of eternal compassion. See the morning star rising on the living tradition of Unitarian Universalism. Unitarian Universalist, walking through the door just gives my heart a lift. People ask, what kind of church is this? Unitarian Universalist.
Thanks to Hal Walker for giving us permission to use his music. Really wonderful singer-songwriter. And I'll name that. Missing in the photos are some children, and I want to name the why. Not that we don't want to include pictures of children, but I put the videos together relatively late in the game and didn't have time to find safe pictures of children. So one of the ways we take care of our young ones is to not put their faces out there when something is going out to the whole wide world. So we were very careful about using those kind of pictures, but I very much want to bring in their presence there. We have been lighting a candle today, a flame of compassion, resistance, and resilience. And Kate Cannon shared a really wonderful interview with Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who used to be a president of our Unitarian Universalist Association and who's now serving our sister congregation in Bloomington, Indiana. It's an interview with that Carrie Newcomer and Parker Palmer offer. So they're interviewing Susan, and she says, that she in her congregation is trying to lift up three ways to be at this moment. She said she's trying to help people understand that it's important to be a community of courage and resistance in this moment, and that it's important to be a community of sanctuary, not just for the people who need, yes, that, but also for our own hearts, our own spirits, protecting and caring and loving each other in the community. And third, being a community of possibility and imagination, so that right now we're planting and watering and caring for the seeds of what we want to be growing, not just what we're fighting against or not wanting, but what are we actually planting and nurturing to grow. So I invite you to consider for a moment which of those might be the place where you're most attuned in your heart these days. The courage and resistance, the sanctuary, the need for sanctuary, your own and others, the sense of possibility and imagination and planting the seeds we want to grow. Invite Carol to light our chalice, our candle out of all of that. I invite you to continue to follow that thread, to notice what's in your heart, who's in your heart this morning, the joys and the sorrows that you carry that feel most present, most in need of your attention, your prayer, your kindness, your care. And if you're in the room, there'll be a chance in the music, and as we're holding each other in the quiet, to place a stone in the bowl of water. If you're online, you have a chance to place a stone by typing something circular, an O or a 0 in the chat, just like a stone here, or actually to type some words that share what is going on for you. I invite us to hold all of this with all that's going on in the world, both the things that are wonderful and the things that are hard, including the suffering around the world. I invite us to be present to ourselves, to our hearts, and to each other. Some stones there for those who didn't bring stones forward to mark what you're holding. For our prayer and meditation, I'd like to offer a retake on the 23rd Psalm that I wrote for a memorial service for Jim Key, who was a member of a congregation I served and also the moderator at the time, or just before then, of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the person who ran all the big meetings. And I'll share that. Last week we had heard the song from Jan Spencer, "How do you do, everybody? How do you do?" And I hadn't talked to Jan for a while. We had an agreement about using that song, and so I followed up to let her know we had used it again and discovered that she had since died since I've talked to her. So with Jim and Jan, in really, really joyful memory, I mean sadness for their loss, but really joyful for their lives. Here's the 23rd Psalm, which is meant to be a psalm, a song, a verse of comfort. May I remember in this tender moment that love is my guide, always, shepherding me toward ways of openness and compassion. I have what I need, really, with love at my side. Love above me, below me, in front of me, behind me, inside every cell of me. Love infused everywhere. Just when the weight of the world I inhabit threatens to drop me in place and press my hope down into the ground beneath me, love invites me to rest for a gentle while and leads the center of my soul to the quiet, still, restoring waters nearby that somehow I had never noticed. And so love quietly sets me once again on its tender and demanding path. Even when the walls close around me and the cries of death echo through untold corners, gripping my heart with fear and sadness, I know that all will be well, that I will be well when love whispers near to me, glints at the corner of my eye, rests with gentle and persistent invitation upon my shoulders. Yes, love blesses me, even as the sources and symbols of my pain look on. Love blesses me from its infinite well. And I turn and notice that goodness and kindness and grace follow me everywhere I go. I live in a house of love, love that will not let me go. I live in a house of love and always will. Jax, I know you're trying to get to the family pride picnic and you're helping set up, but do you have a moment to tell me what's this UU? What's this whole UU thing? You've been excited about it. What is it exactly?
I'm so glad you asked. UUCM is a warm and welcoming community rooted in love, just like you. As the Beatles said, all you need is love, and we live it. Everyone is welcome exactly as they are, and something powerful happens when we connect, we nurture each other. We're a community guided by shared values like justice, peace, and care for the earth. We even sprinkle in some science. Being part of this beloved community keeps calling me to be my best self. Here, take one of our cards. At UUCM, we love the hell out of the world.
Here comes Sandy.
UU is rooted in kindness. It operates like a healthy family, with values and desire for us all to thrive. It's open to a variety of perspectives that support making the most of this life, this world, within a caring community.
Carol already mentioned that 30 years ago this past Wednesday, June 4th, 1995, the first 34 signers and pledgers for a fledgling Unitarian Universalist organization in this area gathered to choose a name. UUs have used many designations for their local groups: society, church, congregation, fellowship, community, parish, meeting, meeting house, and more. And so the options were pretty wide open. Having been born out of the members of the Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalists in Auburn, one of the names considered early on was Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalists North. The Auburn congregation liked that one. As you may have read in Ruth Edwards' article in the Mountain Chalice this month, some of the other names used in print during the year and a half before that vote 30 years ago were Northern Lights, Unitarians in Nevada City, Grass Valley, Unitarian Universalists of in Nevada County, and Nevada County Unitarian Universalists. But in late May 1995, 3 names were proposed for consideration by the members at that time. First Unitarian Universalist Society of Nevada County, Unitarian Universalists of the Mountains, and Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains. You'll never guess which received the most votes. The Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains. Now, not every UU congregation chooses to include the words Unitarian Universalist in their name. It's a mouthful, a whole lot of syllables, 10 to be exact, arranged in unfamiliar ways and that don't exactly flow through one's lips. There's a children's book titled Unitarian Universalism is a Really Long Name. And it is. And even longtime Unitarian Universalists can find it difficult to get those words out smoothly when needing to say them in public. It's easier to say simply UU. So I thought it might be helpful to practice it together this morning. Now, in this, I'm inspired by a terrific music theory teacher with a sense of humor who started every single class years ago by asking us to spell the word appoggiatura together. Appoggiatura. Now, that's a musical ornament that starts on a note that's not in the chord and then moves to the note in the chord, but that is not the point. The point is, with all that repetition of appoggiatura, that spelling still flows out of me 44 years later without having to think about it. So let's try it. First, in bite-sized pieces. I invite you to repeat after me if you're willing. Unitarian. 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 Versalist. Universalist. Universal. Ist. Universal. Ist. Universalist. Unitarian. Universalist. Unitarian. Universalist. Unitarian Universalist. Look at that, Unitarian Universalist. Unitarian Universalist. Unitarian Universalist. So each morning this week, after you get up, and when you first see yourself in the mirror, I invite you to let those 10 syllables flow through you 3 times in a row. And maybe every time we walk through the door we could sing, Unitarian Universalist. And then people who already think we're a cult will have their concerns validated. Unitarian. At the surface, the heresy of our Unitarian ancestors was that they didn't believe in the concept of the Trinity in Christianity. They understood God as distinct from Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and they believed in the unity of God, thus the label Unitarian. Rather than Trinitarian. Now, over time, this understanding of Jesus as distinct from God, as different from God, led to a view of Jesus as more and more and more completely human, as a completely human exemplar. And as radical as that belief was, and as much as it contributes to our name, there was a more significant and meaningful heresy in Unitarianism. Extra syllable. The heresy was believing that we human beings aren't destined ahead of time for either heaven or hell, but rather that what we choose to do in life has an effect on our spiritual future. That was not the reigning idea of their religious world. It was believing that we can and ought to cultivate our goodness, cultivate our moral character, which everyone has in there somewhere. Cultivate our compassion, our kindness, our love, our care. As individuals and as a species, in other words, we can keep getting better. We can be more and more whole and more who we're meant to be, based, as they said, on the divine spark that was already in us and in every single other person. It was believing that we humans have agency, in other words, that we can have an effect regarding who we are and who we're becoming and where we go after we die. Now, it has been a belief that our level of goodness is not set in stone, in other words, that we can and ought to cultivate that spark of good in every one of us. So this led Unitarian Universalists to pursue prison reform, right? Mental health support, education for all, to cultivate the goodness in everybody, among many other things. And the call for us not to write anyone off, not to leave anyone behind. That's the outcome of that kind of thinking. In a parallel way, the primary heresy of our Universalist ancestors was believing that God would never reject anyone, would never send anyone to hell forever, and that therefore neither should we. God was too good and too perfectly loving for humans to believe that God would sentence anyone to eternal punishment or ban them for eternity. So they believed in universal salvation, which is where the name comes from. That every human being ever and from everywhere, no matter how they behaved, no matter what their religion, would be welcomed into heaven and into God's embrace, if not immediately, eventually. And that we might as well, while we're at it, welcome all people into our hearts now for the same reason. Again, no one left behind. 30 years ago, at the time this community was choosing its name, being Unitarian Universalist was understood and experienced in many places as meaning this: meaning-seeking people gathering free from religion, or free from traditional religion and its trappings and all dogma. As a colleague of mine put it, Unitarian Universalist services then were in many places a dry lecture with a concert. From within that time and context, here's the elevator speech crafted and chosen by those first UUCM members here 30 years ago, their mission statement. Listen for what it says about what was important, about their perspective, and notice what still feels true and what feels true also to our heritage, our Unitarian Universalist. Again, so good, heritage. Here it is. I invite you to say it with me. The purpose of our community is to foster liberal religious living through worship, study, service, and fellowship. We seek the enjoyment of religion founded upon devotion to individual freedom of belief. There's more. Relying upon reason as our guide and upon freedom as our method, we seek to grow in understanding of ourselves and of our world to promote and serve the universal human family. Here's UUCM's current mission, crafted and chosen and voted upon by UUCM members here in February 2018. Notice what it says about those of us who worked on it and had input into it and voted on it. Notice what feels true to our UU heritage together. With greatest love and a sense of wonder, we cultivate our spiritual, emotional, and intellectual strength to create a world more compassionate, sustainable, and just. Which brings us to the word community in our name, in the congregation's name. Because more than the particular name chosen 30 years ago, more than the particular missions articulated 30 years ago or 7 years ago, it's the fact that the members themselves ultimately chose the name and the missions that conveys another important core of our religious heritage. Freedom not only of religious personal belief, but also the freedom of members of a given gathered community by any name to make all the big decisions about who can be a member, about whether and who to call as a minister, about purchasing or selling property, about why the community gathers, about the community's mission. We UUs, like Congregationalists and Quakers and Baptists and some Methodists and Presbyterians, among others, are part of the larger free church tradition, which sought and fought, especially on our Universalist side, to free religious communities from state control, and vice versa, and which in the process of granting members, in that process of pursuing that freedom, granted members of a religious community the freedom to make the decisions, the important decisions for their own community, not somebody else far away, not somebody higher up, only the community itself. At a time when religious power and state power were one and the same thing, or at the very least thoroughly intertwined, this radical turn by our ancestors in the 1600s and 1700s to the decision-making power of the people gathered was in essence the cornerstone of the American Revolution, as Brent Smith put it. One of the earliest known legal paper ballots in the prehistory of this nation was in fact issued for members of a congregation to choose their next minister. Unheard of. That's where the voting started. It was congregation members making decisions about their own life away from all the higher ups in Europe. The congregations, the communities making decisions like this were giving birth to and learning kind of as they went to live into what became the self-governing freedom sought in the American Revolution. The word community has less baggage and is less tradition-specific than many other words that are used to name religious communities. And in this month focused on the theme of living love through the practice of freedom, I would lift up a few other important related freedoms in our tradition as raised by a colleague of mine, Brent Smith, as he considered the religious liberty that we hold so dear, right? The chance to believe what our conscience leads us to believe. Smith wrote that the inherent mission of communities like ours in this free church tradition, the mission is to liberate and cultivate the human spirit, to help each and every person become a fully functioning and fully free individual in all ways. Sounds good, right? But he says the paradox of fulfilling a purpose and a mission that yields individual religious liberty is that it can only be done in community. We can only get our personal liberty in community. An individual by themselves may know who they are, but they are not free, he contends. They are simply alone. Freedom, he writes, is the currency spent by individuals but minted in community. Freedom is the currency we spend as individuals, but it's formed and gathered in community. In other words, freedom is relational. In our Unitarian Universalist, that's just rolling off really easily. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, this kind of relational, liberating religious community where people are not alone, but freeing and cultivating their and each other's human spirit is created and recreated when members make a voluntary promise. In traditional language, when members make a covenant or enter a covenant together, a set of promises. But Smith says that this aspirational promise is not a promise, not a pledge that members make to each other, which is how I often frame it. No, he claims, the aspirational pledge that forms truly liberating community is a pledge made with each other to the purpose of the community, its reason for existing. This, he says, is what creates and holds a Unitarian Universalist community together for the long journey. A shared, voluntary and mutually agreed upon promise and commitment to the purpose of the community. That's what helps us hold all our differences, right? Is that we have the common direction, the common intent. A couple weeks ago, I challenged Scott Peck's contention that where you are going is more important than who you're going with. And I'm still not inclined to put that in either or terms. But in this light, I see how going with people you want to be with in a deep direction your heart doesn't want to go will eventually wear one's spirit down. While going in a deep direction your heart wants to go will heighten invitation to invest more deeply in the relationships with the people who are going in that direction and that maybe you aren't quite sure about yet. Again, it's not either or for me, but that adds a new lens for me about this journey. Congregations like this one do also have promises, covenants, aspirational promises about how members will want to treat each other, how they commit to try to behave with each other for everyone's well-being. And these are important promises to each other, but they are secondary to and supportive of that more foundational promise that members make to reach always towards the community's liberating purpose, its reason for being. The tremendous and powerful freedom in a Unitarian Universalist community, and I won't make you say it, the tremendous and powerful freedom isn't the freedom to do whatever you want, or believe whatever you want, or to say whatever you want. It isn't about having no constraints. In the language I shared last Sunday from the Soul Matters introduction to this month's theme, true freedom is about being able to commit ourselves to the things that have our heart. True freedom is about constraints of our own choosing, a voluntary promise, a voluntary pledge, a free-willed vow, a covenant, choosing to become a member of a community with a purpose, are liberating constraints we place, liberating constraints of our own choosing for a higher end. To get clear about and to claim the deep purpose of this community now, in this day, that is work ahead and at hand. In my annual report in last Sunday's annual meeting, I shared my strong awareness that we as human beings and as Unitarian Universalists and as a congregation and community are being called by everything about this moment in time to greater depth, a spiritually and emotionally liberating depth. Most days it feels to me like we don't have a choice but to go deeper. The tradition we've inherited and for which we are now responsible institutionalizes several forms of freedom. Freedom of belief and non-belief, freedom of conscience, freedom of choice, but not mere surface freedoms. The prophetic Julian Jamaica Soto tells us, as she's writing, quote, "To the people who have mistaken freedom for liberation," and I would add to the part of us that has mistaken freedom for liberation, "To be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology, even if they try to take it from you. You must know not that you can do whatever you want. You are not a kudzu vine eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. You must know instead that inside you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding. But to actually be free, you must know and you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. Being free is not a license, but a promise, a covenant. Being free is not a license, but a promise. The final words of this congregation's name are "of the mountains." It's a pretty big claim. When I considered UUCM's current mission statement and talk about it and the vision of creating a world more compassionate, sustainable, and just, influencing the whole world seems a very tall order. Could maybe we start a little closer in with something manageable like a community, more compassionate, sustainable, and just? But like the word world can be quite flexible. It doesn't have to mean the entire earth. There are plenty of worlds within worlds, within worlds, within worlds. So too with the name mountain, right? I think the Unitarian Universalist community of this part of the Sierra Nevada mountains probably gets a little too long as a name. And at the same time is a little too narrow. There are mountains within mountains, right? Within mountains. With world or mountain, you can zoom in or zoom out. You can scale up or scale down your vision as needed to attend to the moment. The Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains. Choosing a name is no small thing. Sing out praises for the journey. Pilgrims we who carry on, searchers in the soul's deep yearnings like our forebears in their time. We seek out the Spirit's wholeness in the endless human quest. Reach inside. Your soul's the kindling of the hearth fire that pilgrims knew. Find the Spirit, always restless. Find it in each mind and heart. Touch and hold that ancient yearning. kindling for a newfound truth. Stand we now upon the threshold, facing futures yet unknown. Hearth behind us, wayside hostel built by those who knew wild roads. Guard we ere their sacred embers, carried in our minds and heart. Here's to this journey, the journey we joined in progress, a journey underway in extraordinary times with fabulous travel companions and heading toward depth with some important things to figure out or affirm and commitments to make, promises to make to each other and with each other. So may we be.
Hi, I'm Daryl Grigsby, member of the Color Me Human Board of Directors.
Hi, I'm Lolo Stone.
Hi, I'm Kurt Beckman.
Hi, I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa, serving on Color Me Human's board.
On behalf of everyone at Color Me Human, thank you. Thank you, UUCM, for choosing to share your plate and your values with us this month.
So as you know, led by a multicultural, multiracial team, Color Me Human was founded by Tracy Pepper in February of 2020. And we're dedicated to celebrating and supporting under-resourced communities in our county.
We were called to build a bridge between harm and healing, between isolation and belonging, between injustice and joy. Our mission is simple but bold.
Our mission is to fearlessly fight systems of oppression and boldly champion equity and inclusion for all people, serving as a bridge to building a vibrant and empowered community.
We strive to create a welcoming environment where the positive contributions of every individual are recognized and valued.
And we know this is not a reality, that people of color of all ages, LGBTQ plus persons and others have been made to feel unwelcome by hostile words and deeds.
We do this not from a place of theory, but from the lived experiences of our neighbors, our elders, our children. Because the truth is, not everyone feels safe here. Not everyone feels seen. And until every child in this county can walk into a classroom, a park, a public meeting, and feel like they belong, we still have work to do.
In these uncertain times, Color Me Human's mission is more vital than ever.
Color Me Human is an all-volunteer organization. We don't have a paid staff. We don't have a corporate sponsor. What we do have is a powerful community, a vision rooted in love and justice and partners like you. Your contribution today helps us grow our impact to meet the needs of those targeted by racism, homophobia, and bias, and to build spaces of joy, culture, and connection.
Please join us for our fifth annual Juneteenth celebration on June 21st at Condon Park from noon to 3.
Come witness what belonging looks like in action. And if this work speaks to you, don't let this be a one-time gesture. Become a monthly donor. Join the movement. Help us make Nevada County known, not just for its trees and trails, but as a place where equity lives, where everyone is valued, where no one is left behind. UUCM, thank you for your generosity. Thank you for being the kind of community that doesn't look away. We're honored to be in this with you.
Thank you very much.
Those were some of the board members from Color Me Human, which is our Share the Plate partner this month. And clearly you see their mission stated there. 50% of our offering this morning will go to Color Me Human, and half of the morning's offering will support for our UUCM community and help it strengthen and grow in its years ahead. Please see the slide for additional ways to give. Thank you for your generosity of heart and resources. We dedicate these gifts to the ideal that all may be free in all ways, and that our church may continue to serve as a shelter and haven for freedom.
Some of you will have recognized that tune as Go Now in Peace. It was sung by this congregation every Sunday for a good while, until the composer asked us not to change the words. The original was, "May the Spirit of God surround you everywhere you may go." And UU congregations were singing, "May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere you may go." Sounds wonderful, right? Except the composer didn't ask us not to do that. And that didn't fit everyone's theology, right? Thank you to our elevator speechers, Jill and Janet and Gwen and Jackson, Jim and Sandy and Viv. Thank you very much, whether you read or allowed yours to be read. Much appreciated. Carol, thanks for being worship associate today so beautifully. Heather, what a joy to have you at the piano. And Kate, thank you for joining. Yeah. Arlene, beautiful land acknowledgement. Thank you very much. And Charlene, thank you for crafting the chalice lighting words for us. Andy and Cypress doing extra today. Thank you very much for holding that down in the back. Eileen for serving every week pretty much as our Zoom host. Shanti for another beautiful setting. I always like to see what's going to be here. Gwen and Jean and Laura for greeting people with such care. George for being our lay pastoral care person today. George was up front during Joys and Sorrows. Refreshments, Janet, among others, thank you for adding that to your list today, too. And please thank Corey and Cheryl Spalding when you see them for working with our youngest ones upstairs. UUCM's book group meets today. The Women's Circle meets on Monday. There's a Joys and Sorrows candlelight service, and at 6:30, Betsy Hayden will be playing harp music for a half hour. Come and find sanctuary for your spirit there. Thursday, yeah. Arts and Crafts Circle on Friday. And after this service, we have a UU 101 at noon for anyone who wants to find out a little bit more. Members, you can sign the 30th anniversary book, and please do, all the way in the back through the month of June, but try it today. And you have a chance to vote, here's that very Unitarian Universalist thing, on the Share the Plate partners for the coming year. Which organizations will get some of the money from the offerings? So Keith is out in the front, and there are ballots online, so check with him. So Janet, what is Unitarian Universalism?
We are a religious denomination bound to each other through covenant and living our 6 values centered around love. That's short. That's if we have a very fast elevator ride. And I figured the first question they're going to ask, well, what are your 6 values? So I put it in my head. It's JETPIG, Jetpig, JETPIG. It's justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. So if we have time, I figured the next thing they're going to ask is, do you believe in God? Because that's typically the next question. So I have prepared kind of 6 bullet points here, and I say that UU supports my belief that God is not a given, but a question. God is not defined for us, but by us. Life is a mystery. We need not think alike to love alike. What I do is more important than what I say, and it is our human responsibility to create heaven on earth. So, Kevin, what is Unitarian Universalism?
Thanks for asking. Janet, I'm shocked you had bullet points. The current draft. Unitarian Universalists believe that we don't have to think alike or have the same religious beliefs to love alike or be in community together. That what each of us thinks we know will never stop changing and growing. That what other people do with and for each other in this world matters most, and that every person deserves compassion and love. What I so appreciate beyond the deep connections with people is that Unitarian Universalism keeps calling me again and again to be my most open, most generous, and most genuine self. So with what calls you on, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and to sing in community. earlier, I would have thought it would be helpful to have one elevator speech for all UUs. Couldn't we get the super smart and articulate people together to craft some amazingly perfect words that we could all use? Was that too much to ask? Right. What I sense so clearly in the midst of the recent elevator speech writing experience is how diminished the truth would be if we all felt and saw and said exactly the same thing. We each experience this living tradition through the lenses of our own lives and wants and needs and hopes, and we have the freedom to do so. It's one always living tradition, experienced in as many ways as there are people who experience it and who claim, even quietly, the identity of Unitarian Universalist, including, I hope, you. May we remember that we are not alone. We're going to extinguish this flame, but not everything else that is part of this community as we head forth. I invite you to share these good words with each other. Let us carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Reverend Sanjay Hawk from Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalist, the original congregation, is joining us next Sunday. We're going to do a service together here. Faith of our fathers or not. Please join us for refreshments and conversation and connection. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for crossing the threshold, those of you who came for the first time.